Okay, you got to stand. You played Family Feud. You watched Family Feud. All right. You stand here. You stand here. Matt had this set up last week. You got to smack when you know the answer, right? Huh? Well, Rustin already said it's plenty thick. It's okay. I think you'll know these. These are pretty good. All right, so Mandy did our survey this week. Everybody gets it, right? If his team, like he's going to call your team, probably have to go split this guys and girls. All right.
So I can look at them for the answer?
The first answer you have to give.
But you're not
Because I'm old.
I think she's smart. She's pretty smart. That's true. A lot of salt. We'll track talking back. Salt and pepper. Okay, here we go. Name somewhere that parents can't wait for their kids to go.
college. But
College is the exact word we're looking for. Point for Kevin. Number one answer was college. Okay, so that means your team of dudes gets to say what's the number. Oh, yeah, number two answer.
so you want someone? No, that's.
Yeah.
That's your team.
You said dudes. I thought it was
It might be out west.
no.
Parents can't wait for their kids to go where? Grandparents' house. Grandparents' house. Oh, this is so confusing. All right. You want to play girls and guys or you want to play halvesies? They're what? Week? Okay, so we're going to play this half and that half. We'll do something different. Cats away, mice will play. Okay, so Heather got the right answer for your team. Grandparents' house is number 3, though. So 2 more. Number 2 and number 4. Name somewhere that parents cannot wait for their kids to go. Summer camp? Good guess, not on the list. To bed. Number 2 answer, sorry. All right, and number 4? Parents can't wait for their kids to go to? Good one. I agree. Work. There it is. Work. Kevin's side. Own that. This side. Oh, we got more questions. We got more questions. Because now she's got to redeem herself. This side. All right. Next question. I got 4 answers. Name something that parents warn their children not to get their fingers caught in.
The door.
Door. Number 1 answer. Door. Okay, 3 more. Name something that parents warn their children not to get their fingers stuck in. Door's number 1 answer. Their nose. Number 4. All right, number 2 and 3. What you got? Mousetrap. Good answer, but not on there. I've done both of these.
The cookie jar.
Huh? Cookie jar's a good one. Electric socket. Number 2 answer. That's it. 1 more, which is closely related. Uh-huh. Ooh. Ah. Does that mean if this side guesses it, they steal it back?
Did they answer 3 times?
Yeah, you guys are rolling. You got 3 out of the 4. 1 more.
Repeat the question.
Fan. You got it. A fan. Electrical. Yours is similar, but very different results. Very different results. I feel like that's even, huh? Y'all ran 4, you guys just ran 4. Okay. Here we go. Yeah, back to the buzzer. This only has 3 answers, okay? What do parents instruct their children to do while riding in the car? Be quiet. Number 2 answer. But, huh? Right, and if she answers something higher, then she steals it. Go ahead. Seatbelt on, number 1 answer. So, you guys get 1 more answer. Number 3. What do you want your kids to do while riding in the car?
They said be quiet.
Correct.
Yeah, stop putting your foot like that.
Stop fighting.
Stop fighting, behave, correct, yeah. Annalisa's right in the middle here. Neutral, all right. So I feel like it's still tied, here we go. Name something that kids often ask for before bed that their parents refuse.
Something to eat.
Something to eat, number one answer. That's it. Not on the list. Two more. Something to drink, glass of water. Yes, that was the number two answer. What's number three?
Going to bed with mom and dad.
Oh, that's true. Can we go sleep in your bed? Yeah. A book, close. Watch TV, that's it. Number three. Yep. Okay, they're on a roll. I got one more. Either this is your chance for redemption to tie it, or this is your chance to bury him. You got less people on this side too. All right. Last question. Name something that many teenagers want to do before their parents think they are ready.
You went first.
Oh, it's not on the list. G-rated. It's not on the list. Give me another one.
Drive.
Drive, number one answer. Huh? He admitted that he hit too early and he didn't have an answer ready. Ooh. Okay, good point.
What was the question?
Because you're about to win and bury him. You get three more. Here we go. Name something that teenagers want to do before their parents think they're ready. Date is number three. She already said drive, which was number one, so you get two more. Drink, number four answer. Where'd you come from? Okay. You're on this side. And number two, this is totally 2023. This is not the case when I was a kid. Social media, get a phone. Yep. Gina wins. This side wins. A little bit rigged. Rules. Right. I didn't read the rules correctly. All right, dudes. We're gonna start in Genesis today. We're going to start in Genesis. I want to have I want to look at two of the older verses, Genesis and Deuteronomy, before we get into probably the three most popular verses in the Bible for parenting, all right? But I wanted to make this point first. Genesis and then Deuteronomy. So go to chapter 22. We're going to look at the daddy-o of all daddy-os here. When you're turning there, what does your title say for that paragraph? What is Genesis 22 about? Sacrifice of Isaac. Chapter 21 is the birth of Isaac. Chapter 23 is death of Sarah. So right in the middle is this interesting story of Abraham being tested. Exactly. That's what yours is called instead of sacrifice? Okay, interesting. Sacrifice of Isaac or testing of Abraham, which is in the very first verse. So somebody read, please, verse 1, 2, and 3. First half of 3. 1, 2, and first half of 3.
One time later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, Abraham, here I am, he replied. Then God said, take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on the mountain I will show you. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and rode his donkey.
There you go. Thank you. Verse 1, 2, and 3 are, this is fascinating because we all know the story. Abraham and Sarai had this terrible thing about getting pregnant and having a kid, and God provides Isaac later in life. Remember, they were kind of older. And this is interesting. God tests Abraham. The word test is pronounced nasah in Hebrew, and it means a couple things. It means to tempt someone. And make them prove or proof themselves. And I know that later, or growing up, I feel like maybe you guys have heard this phrase that we're not supposed to test God or God's not supposed to test us. I don't know if you've ever heard something like that. But the reality is this is like pretty blatant. Abraham was given an opportunity. He was given instructions. He was given a test. God gave him a specific, actually, let me be careful how I say this. God gave him specific instructions, right? But did he give him all the instructions? Look back at what Bruce read. He would show him which mountain later. When you're told to do something, do you want all the instructions and the map when someone tells you something? Right. When you're going to build something, you want a plan. You want to know the budget. You want to know the material list. You want to know the blueprints maybe. Yes? The most frustrating thing ever is when you build something and someone criticizes it, like, wait, I didn't have a blueprint. What do you mean? Or when you go on a trip. I know we can go on the trip and we can Google stuff while we're going, but you still want to know your destination. You want to know where you go. Abraham was told, go to this region, and then I will tell you the mountain that you're supposed to be on. I think that's really bizarre, and I guess it screams more about faith, right, in this story, and obedience. And speaking of obedience, the beginning of verse 3, Abraham rose early in the morning. He didn't wait, right, like another week and all that kind of stuff. That's always blown my mind that he giddy up the next morning, early priorities, obedience. All right. I'm going to come back to that in a second. But if you flip over to Deuteronomy now, we see that same word, and I wanted to point it out to you. Deuteronomy chapter 8. Deuteronomy 8. Somebody read 2 and 3, please. 8, 2, 3.
And you shall remember the whole way that the Lord your God has led you these 40 years in the wilderness, that he might humble you, testing you to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or not. And he humbled you and let you hunger and fed you with manna, which you did not know before your fathers know, that he might make you know that man does not live by bread alone, but man lives by every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord.
All right, thanks. Powerful couple verses there. You know, there's a lot to that. Every word that comes from, like, that's a powerful phrase. But verse 2, I don't know if you caught this. Alex read that God would humble you and test you. You see that phrase? Humble you and test you. The word test is the same word. Nasah, to test and to prove and to tempt. That God would humble you and he would tempt you. We all know the grumblings of the people, right? When they were wandering. And then he provided the manna. And then the next verse in verse 4, your clothing did not wear out. God always provided for them. But he also tempted them and gave them plenty of opportunity to complain, to wander, all that stuff. But this other word in here, that he might humble you, goes right along with it, but it's a little bit different. And this is what I thought was interesting. To afflict, to depress, to stoop, to weaken and oppress. Not the most encouraging word in the world, or word picture, but they go together in there. God led you in the wilderness 40 years that he might humble and test you. Nasah and Anah. Do these words look pretty similar? Right? Pretty close related, right? Almost the exact same letters. But two interesting things here. The reason I bring these up is because when I read those and the premise of Genesis 22, Abraham followed, and it was about his son, his precious only son. Like that was a huge deal for him to do that. But it was parenting. And the reason I started with that, and I thought of this weeks and weeks ago when we brought this up and made a schedule of like, this is going to be the week on parenting. I thought of that verse because the idea of doing difficult parenting really sucks sometimes. And Abraham was given like almost the worst instruction you could ever be given, is go kill your son. Well, not just that, but go worship God through doing that, an offering, a burnt sacrifice. Like, it's not logical. That's the weirdest instructions ever, I feel like, as far as being parents. Like, that's a terrible thing. So, to humble you and to tempt you. Two interesting things here. But let me ask you a question. Does any of this sound like parenting? Give me an example. Give us an example.
Whether your kids, she knows this too. The way your kids make poor choices. And, even if it's after you raise them up to make the right choice, and then you see them make the choices that they make, maybe they're not the best choices.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to really go through. I mean, that's the whole thing. Is to see it happen, and then to have to let it happen sometimes too.
Sometimes let it, sure. It's a humbling process. Yeah, absolutely. What's another one? You're nodding your head. There are some moments that are flat out depressing, right? You feel like, did I fail this bad?
Exactly.
It's this obvious to me in my shoes, yeah. All right.
Afflict.
Uh-huh.
We were sick the other day, but she still got up 57 times Thursday night. Whether it was a fever or something like that.
Uh-huh.
I can sleep.
Yeah, it kind of, I would say, brings out the worst in you. It actually brings out the best in the worst moments. It's afflicting. Yeah, it's terrible. What we go through sometimes, and I guess the decision you got to make, right, for your priorities. Okay? What's another one?
I think that you should oppress
Take that out of the recording. I thought of stoop down to someone's level. I thought of the idea that as a parent, especially when they're little, you read books and watch TV shows and cartoons that you would not normally, they're not really on our level, right? You have to kind of come down to a juvenile child's level to read or to entertainment. You go to the movie theater, do you always choose the movie you want to see? Or do you kind of, it's not a negative word, this one. It doesn't, I don't think it has to be negative when you think about the idea of trying to relate and trying to do what other people want to do. But you have to humble yourself to do that. Stoop down. Sometimes, I did this yesterday. There was a group of kids and we were taking a picture and I kind of crouched down to try to get to their level. And I thought, some of the best pictures in life, if you've ever seen, think of the pictures like when a soldier's in uniform and they stoop down to talk to a kid, maybe like Iraq, Afghanistan kind of images, you see those, or a policeman, a fireman. Sometimes those are the best images when you see someone stoop down to a little child's level and they're still in uniform. And it shows you, as impressive as a uniform can be sometimes, it's incredible when someone does this and they come down to someone else's level. So it's interesting because you guys used examples of like some really hard things. These are really difficult. But there's also the picture up here, tempting, proving, and proof. We were watching a TV show this week, and the word proof came up. Do you remember it? British Junior Bake Off, okay? It's good stuff. They make a lot of cakes that are very impressive for 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds to be making, but there was a situation where they were baking dough. Do you remember? Do what? Let the dough rise. Right. Do you remember the story? Huh? The judges walk around, right, and they're checking on people. And the little boy says, I let my dough rise once. And they said, well, are you going to proof it a second time? And he's like, no, I don't have time. Because it's a timed competition. I remember when I was a kid, my mom would let the bread dough rise in the bowl with the towel over it, and then she would call me, and I'd come over and I'd punch it, and it would sink back down. It's a process. This has to happen, right? Yeast. Okay. He said he wasn't going to let it rise a second time or let it proof a second time. And they said, okay, we'll see how it tastes. And what happened? Do what? It wasn't fluffy enough. It didn't taste very well. And the other kids' recipes turned out a little bit better than his. And poor Tomas got sent home that week. He got voted off the island because his didn't turn out as well. What is that? He went through this process and he didn't let his dough proof a second time and it didn't turn out well. That's a picture of patience. You need to have time to let the process take place. And obviously in a competition, it couldn't happen. So he got sent home. But there's a process to this. And obviously one of the worst things sometimes of this is having the patience to let some kid go through the refining fire of growing up, right? And it's a hard thing as a parent to do. What?
But I think that those be humble as a parent, I think it's more seeing myself and my errors and my ways of doing it. That's humbling.
Sure. More than what?
When a kid, well, you see yourself, you see your errors.
Yeah. I think that's going to come up in this third verse in a second because I think you're right. That's the hard thing about parenting, right? Is you look so much at the little one and the focus is on the little one and everybody wants to hold the cute little baby, but there's so much going on with the parent still because you're learning and growing and there's a lot to it. And then you're balancing not just the kid, but the life and the school and the work and everything else. Yeah.
So, you think about learning. If you handle a situation, you have to, one time, you really don't handle it for the moment,
You've only handled it for a moment? Okay.
But when you do it constantly over and over and over and over, right, like proofing it,
Yeah.
then you're focused on the end result.
I thought of that and I think when I was going over this yesterday, that was the exact phrase I used, the end result. Because it's a process and it's not pretty all the time, but it matters in the end how things turn out. It matters the steps that you take along the way, especially if you repeat them.
So
Over and over.
in my early years, I wouldn't have kissed everything. And I told him it was because of, they asked the question, why can't you do this? Because I'm bad and told you so.
Dude.
It's very easy to do that one time. A lot of times what this was, because I was angry, and they did what they did. And you just try to get it to stop right there. Yelling, intimidation. But for the end result, it has to be that second proofing and third and fourth, and that's when patience comes in. That's when I don't want to listen to me. I'm sorry, but I hear what he's saying, where he's coming from. And I come out and get beyond my anger.
You, right.
Right?
Yeah.
For my offense for that moment.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm going to be focused on me. And not on him.
And the end result.
Right?
Yeah. It's a good point. Got the front row giggling up here. Good stuff. Okay, so you're in Deuteronomy 8. I told you we're going to do 3 famous verses, passages. Turn back to Deuteronomy 6. A lot of you guys will know this. We've talked about the Shema before, Deuteronomy 6:4. But we're going to start.
Something I've just been thinking about since I read Abraham.
Genesis?
Genesis. And he stooped down.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I try to serve my kids. Probably a lot because that's what I've witnessed, that's what I learned.
Yeah.
From my parents, serving others and serving their family.
Yeah.
But I do that for them, but I do that more. I do that hopefully for what they'll be later in life. Think about, God testing Abraham, what do you want to teach your son?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I mean, God saying, this is what I want you to do. You're like, this is, but how would I want my son to respond to that?
Mm-hmm. To God's commands, yeah. And what's not in there is God spoke to Abraham. What did God say to Sarai? Because think about how often in parenting, you're not on the same page. Can you imagine if Abraham told her, hey, we're going on a road trip, see you later. What are you doing? I'm going to kill your son. Right? Well, God told me to do it. He what? And maybe I'm putting too much of our context into that, but think about your connection with your spouse right now. It's an interesting thing. You can probably think back of the conversations you've had in your marriage and realized when you said something, if your spouse replied, okay. No more questions, no more, well, tell me. Yeah, exactly. You laugh, and I don't take this for granted that there was no questions in here. That's the worst thing about the Bible, right? Is we don't know what else happened in the context.
Every time I spoke, saying I was asking questions, not how you know.
Think about that. You wondered what else was there. What was Sarah thinking? Because you're right. It's makes you wonder what happened. What did that do to their relationship? Or was God speaking to her in a different way? He had spoken to her about the baby, right? And she laughed and all that stuff previously to that. Yeah. Okay. Chapter 6. Let's read. I think we're going to do a few here. We're going to do a long section because this is a good section. Will you read verse 1, please, loud? 6:1. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Nora, verse 2. All right, Sean, 3.
Hear therefore, O Israel, be careful to do them, that I may go well with you, and that you may multiply greatly, as the Lord, the God of your fathers, has promised you, and I am telling you with them.
All right, Josh, you got 4.
Listen, Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is the only God.
The Lord is the only God. You got it, Nate? 5. Deuteronomy 6:5, yeah. This is the big one. Yep. That's a big one. Jennifer, 6.
These commandments that I give you today are written in your heart.
Heather, 7.
You shall teach them to your children, walk together, stand in your heart, walk the other way, lie down, rise.
We got 8. Corey, 8.
You shall bind them as a sign in your hand, they shall be as frontlet between your eyes.
And 9. Lindley, 9.
Write them on the doorframes of your houses
And
and on your gates.
on your gates. All right, thanks. That's a long passage, so I wanted to break it up by different voices, which was cool because this is one of the most significant passages. I don't know. That's why I said it's one of the famous passages about raising your children. At the end there, you see verse 7, 8, 9. You need reminders. Talk about them. Talk about them. Talk about them. When you rise, when you lay down, when you're in your house, when you're out of your house, put a Post-it note here and there, everywhere. Be reminded of God's scriptures. And then you back up and verse 7 specifically says, teach them to your children. Teach them diligently, depending on what your translation says. But verse 2 says that you may fear the Lord your God, you, your son, and your son's son. That is specifically, and I can look around this room right here and think, some of you have your kids, and then you have your grandkids. And you have grandkids, you have grandkids. Around this room, people are starting to you can see the next generation, this is playing out, this very thing. Well, the thing that I took away from this, and the biggest thing is, this is the commandment, the statutes, the rules the Lord your God commanded to teach you, that you may do them. That word there, observe. Teach them to your kids, but observe them. Do you remember what that word is in Hebrew? I thought you would remember this. No? Shauna, observe? Samar. You remember this? I thought you would. Matt's talked about this a few times. This word it's starting to it keeps expanding, I guess, is the thing about it. To observe, to protect, and to guard. Picture a garden. You put a fence around a garden, and then when you got trees and blueberries, you got to put a net over the top of that because you're guarding it, you're protecting it. But when he had described it a few weeks ago, he said it goes beyond that. It says, you are protecting this like your life depends on it. Well, if you think about the seriousness of teaching God's commands to your children and your grandchildren, protect it like your life depends on it. That's powerful. Back to the beginning of that, this is the statutes and the rules. And then if you think about Deuteronomy 8, it was about remembering. Pass these things on to your children like your life depends on it. And I love that because that's so convicting to think there's nothing else that kind of matters. Like priorities, this should be the one thing. We talked about this. This should be the one thing that you pass on to your children. And when you don't see it, like we said earlier, it's depressing. It's agonizing in your gut, which I look at older parents that are like, I've watched them or they're older than me, go through these moments, and I can't get my mind and my heart around how painful it is. And an example of that is, I remember talking to a mom a few weeks ago. Actually, this one was a few years ago, and her son had just been arrested. Agony and brokenheartedness. Obviously, getting arrested, let me say this also, is not the end of the world. Thousands of people get arrested every day. Life goes on. However, it is a difficult step in the process. So when I read this, look back at, I know I'm kind of jumping around here, but in verse 1, these are the commandments, the statutes and the rules the Lord your God wants to teach you, that you may do them in the land you're going to possess. But the million-dollar question is why? There's a comma in there. You see it? Where verse 2 starts. This is what you're supposed to do and where you're supposed to do it. Why? So that you may fear the Lord your God. At the end of that verse, it says, so that your days may be long. But that's not the first reason it gives. The first reason it gives is so that you may fear the Lord. Way too often, I feel like we talk about our faith in a way of so that life may be easy, so that you can be blessed, so that you can go to heaven, so that you have riches, so that all kinds of reasons. That's not the first reason that's given. The first reason in here is so that you may fear the Lord your God. Remember the word yirah is to be in awe of God. That's the first priority. And no matter what happens in your life, be in awe of God. Always give credit to God, always ask God, always think about God first, so that you may fear Him. Because it doesn't say so that your days may be long. It doesn't say so that your kid can go to the best college. It doesn't say your person can have all the success in the world, 5 cars in the garage, all this kind of stuff. It doesn't say the biggest square footage. It doesn't say any of that. What it says is fear the Lord your God. Everything you do in life should point to fear the Lord your God. And I don't think that I'm stretching that too far because think about what this verse is. It says when you go to the land that you're going, they were in the wilderness and God is telling them when you go to that land, which was all they could see at this point, wandered for 40 years and the only promise they had was you're going to be in this land. You're going to be in this land. And all the way he's saying, remember my commandments, my statutes, and my rules so that you may fear the Lord your God. Samar means to guard and protect those things like your life depends on it. Let's flip over to Proverbs. Yeah.
It makes me think about what we should remember, when we start having a conversation,
Mm-hmm.
or that somehow that question comes into it. I just remember talking to my kids about, I didn't want them to be so stressed. They get in high school and they start stressing about it. It's like there's a timer that's about to go off.
Mm-hmm.
And it is scary going out and graduating, moving
one thing we always told our kids is that, God's, He's giving you gifts and talents, and He's going to give you every possible opportunity, He says, if you pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the most important thing, more important than any of that, what you're going to do for the rest of your life, is how you're going to follow Him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the same thing.
That's it. Yeah. That's it.
That's a pretty good question for that. I get fear.
Okay.
That's right. Unless you read something different to me, it should be scared or frightened.
In the word yirah, a lot of times it's more on the side of respect than it is fear. As like scared, more so respect not for what's coming, a fear of what's coming, but a respect for what's already happened. Because the whole book, shows us God's character as opposed to, oh crap, do I have enough insurance for what's coming? And that's not respect for God and who He is. But it's a fair point to say there's always questions, there's always curiosities, and some worry over the future.
Yeah, maybe that's in the dictionary, fear is not.
Right. Yeah, that's why sometimes in here, I don't know if this is the best translation because, and the next one's the biggest example of that. A lot of times maybe it shouldn't be fear, maybe it should be awe.
Well, I think that's a number of times in the scriptures that someone came in contact with an angelic being, a holy being. What was their response? Their response was to tremble in fear and drop to the ground because they were awestruck. They were, it's, there's nothing else I can do.
Yeah. Awe. So the lady that is talking about her son being arrested, Sean and I are standing there, and she kind of shrugs her shoulders, and a grin comes across her face, and she says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. That's what she said to us. Proverbs 22:6. And I didn't have the heart to say it, to question her in that moment, because she was finding some solace in the comfort of that verse. And I almost said that promise. The problem is we look at this verse like it's a promise, like it's a black and white equation. And the truth is it is not a guarantee. It's an encouragement, but it is not a promise. And the reason for that is because Proverbs is full of good stuff, full of good encouragement, full of good phrases, full of things that you should read. We talked about how 31 verses or 31 chapters, and Matt was encouraging all of us, read this one chapter a day per month. And it's just great to walk through Proverbs. There's all kinds of stuff there you could slap on bumper stickers all over the place. Proverbs is great. Verse 5, right before that, thorns and snares are the way of the crooked. Guard your soul and keep from them. That's great. That's great advice. That is a great picture. But verse 6, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. So the problem with that is it's not a guarantee about faith. It is an encouragement about morals, but it is not a guarantee about behavior based on faith. And this is what I mean. Train up a child in the way. The word way means a journey. And the other place that we find that word in Scripture, which I love this story, is in Kings when Elijah is arguing with the guys who worship the god of Baal or Baal. And do you remember this? They set up 2 altars. And the people that follow Baal, he says to them, okay, if your God can set fire to your altar and burn it, then we'll believe him. But if my God will burn my altar, we'll believe him. You remember what happens? They start praying, screaming to their God, dancing, cutting themselves. All this is in there. And they say, and he kind of taunts them. He's like, where's your God? Is he busy? Is he in the bathroom? Is he relieving himself? Is what the word. And then it says, is he sleeping or is he on a journey? That's what he asked them. It's the same word. So has your God checked out? Is he traveling? Is he off? Is he not paying attention to you? And then what does he do? He steps over to his altar and he pours water on it. And then he pours more water on it, so much so that there's standing water around it like a moat. There's enough water to be standing visible. And he says, I don't know if he says in the God of Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob, but he says, to my God, and he humbly asks him, and God lights that thing on fire and evaporates the water. It's instantaneous, and it's that intense that it zaps and dries up all of that. Powerful. Powerful because God's presence showed up, but also powerful because he was comparing. Okay, back to this. Train up a child in the journey that he should take. It's not a promise that says, put him on the path that you want, or train him up to go do this stuff that you dictate, but train him in the journey that they should be on. What journey should a kid go on? Well, the journey that Nate is going to be on is different than Josh. Are they close? Yeah. Do they look alike? Yeah. Same household? Yeah. But they're different people, right? Everly and Nora, we can't raise them the same. Close kids, blonde hair, similar, all that kind of stuff, but different kids. I've had this conversation, and I don't know if this is fair because they're not here. I've had this conversation with Matt over and over. Roma and Justice, two different kids. Justice, LSU engineer, not the same as Roman, right? You can see it in your kids when you think about the differences in their personalities and in their desires and the journey that they're going to choose. Personalities, you can think about personalities two different ways. When personalities, we refer to the zones, which is scriptural. It's the gifting and your innate wiring inside of you. That shows a lot about where a person should go and what path or what journey they should be on in life. The problem sometimes is our personalities have a lot of emotions to them. And if you look at more in Proverbs, your emotions, and they change, and your heart can take you different places based on all kinds of stuff, right? But your innate wiring that you were born with, that God put inside of you in your personality, that's significant. And it affects an engineer or a salesperson or I talk about trades and this college and if you should be military and all these things is exactly what Deb said. All this stuff is all this pressure about after high school. There's all kinds of beautiful things that kids do as kids, as teenagers, as high schoolers, and then as adults when they start to grow and move on beyond that. So what I'm saying is that the verse here that we think about this guaranteed promise about living out their faith when they're adults, you need to back up a whole bunch and say, wait a second. You have to respect and appreciate who God created and wired the kid to be, the experiences that he's given them, and the direction that they're on. Picture the parents out at the ballpark that are harping on a kid, and you realize it's that classic example where you are trying to get your kid to live your glory days kind of thing through the parents and all the expectations and all that stuff. Man, that's one of the worst things we can do to our kids sometimes is put on those expectations. It's got to be based on how God created them. And it's not the same way that God created their sibling, and it's definitely not the same way he created you as the parent or us as the parent. The last verse is in Psalms 127. One of the shortest chapters. Again, good stuff. Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build and labor in vain, is verse 1. Good stuff. But look at verse 3. Children are a heritage from the Lord, the fruit of the womb a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the children of one's youth. Blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. He shall not be put to shame when he speaks with his enemies at the gate. That's a cool verse. My dad wrote that in the card to me one time to compliment me, and it's very encouraging, right? But verse 3 is not always translated correctly. So does anybody have anything different in your translation besides children are a heritage from the Lord? Verse 3. No, that's what it says? Verse 3, children are a heritage from the Lord. A reward. I think if you look at the NIV, which I thought that's what some of you guys were going to say, is it's gift. Is how it's translated. There's another one.
Inheritance.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is, and that's what I wanted to point out. If you think about it, a gift, if you Google it, and if you see a hand-painted sign at some store, it's going to say a gift. Children are a gift from the Lord. What a pretty phrase. Children are a gift from the Lord. Well, some gifts you ask for and some gifts are a surprise, right? Children are a gift from the Lord. The problem is if you look up like Blue Letter, it's easy to find. The word gift is not in there, all right? Which changes the translation of that a lot. There is a reward piece to it. Sure, it can seem like a gift. There is a ton of heritage and whatnot because you're continuing the next generation. But how about that word right there? Children are an inheritance from the Lord. All right. Well, some of you guys have not experienced this in life, but a few people in here, I've had specific conversations with you about inheritance. Sometimes you think about inheritance, and you and I had this conversation, when an older person is getting the family together and they start giving things away. That can be a really cool process, right? So somebody really appreciates this table, put your name on it. Somebody really wants the living room furniture, put their name on it. And it's neat when a person can go through life with joy of giving. It's different when someone passes away and the family gets together and they say, who wants the table? Who wants the dining room table? Who wants the dishes? And it can be great, it can be wonderful, but it can also get a little bit awkward, right? Anybody been through this? Okay. I was a college freshman cleaning out Grandpa's house. Weird, hard. Other grandparents did the yard sale, did the estate sale, gave us all kinds of things. It was a whole different process, two different sides of my family. Well, inheritance. Some of you have dealt with an inheritance where you wanted something passed down to you, and other times in inheritance, this is not what I asked for. And then in inheritance, you have to make tough decisions. Oh, I'm going to inherit millions from this aunt. Well, what about you inherit the debt from this one family member that you have to deal with, and you have to go pay the bills on the house, or you have to settle up with a lawyer in that process, or there's back taxes or something like that. There's some difficult things to inheritance. And anybody have been an executor of an estate? That's not a fun process. That's a ton of work. And when you got to get siblings together and you got to figure this stuff out, this is a difficult thing. Can it be a wonderful thing? You can honor your loved one or whoever's gone before you with inheritance. There's good memories. Sure, there can be like things that can help you, money, a house, a car, all kinds of stuff can be good about it, but it's also a difficult process to go through. Children are an inheritance from the Lord. They're wonderful. Like words don't describe how wonderful children can be. But it's responsibility to make tough decisions. It's tough, it's hard, it's difficult, it requires tons of communication. And I picture the few conversations, I say a few, I feel like I've been through a lot of conversations about this. And it's difficult. You got a trailer, right, from your father-in-law. Was that great? Has it been handy? It's been wonderful. Does a trailer require changing the tag on it and putting new tires on it, finding a place to keep it? Every gift that falls in this category can be a good thing, but it takes some responsibility. We've had conversations at our house because land or a house, it's not just the deed that you get. There's responsibility of taxes. You have to change the ownership over to it. You have to communicate with siblings. So we don't need to stay on this too long, but do you get what I'm saying? When you Google this and it says children are a gift from the Lord, that doesn't paint the whole picture because it's not all wonderful. Sometimes it's middle of the night getting up with a baby and taking care and doing this, which is this, in order to take care of this. Wonderful gift, but really tough responsibility. I got a couple pictures up here that I feel like summarizes this. Sometimes parenting is that we want to give our kids the yellow brick road. We want to provide everything. We want to point them in the right direction. We want them to take this route, and we want to make it easy for them, and we want to provide for them. Next picture. Sometimes, though, it's a little more like this. You want to point them in the right direction, but there might be some bumps along the way, but they're going to have some guidance. Steel is not exactly something you want to run into, but sometimes it happens. And you still want them, though, going in the right direction. And then sometimes this happens. A few bumps along the way, some pretty difficult moments. Every once in a while, there's, and I don't mean to make this too serious of a metaphor, but think about it. If you've ever seen an accident on the side of the roadway and it pops up some flowers and a little cross next to it, there's some difficult, terrible tragedies that happen in life. And I don't mean necessarily in parenting that it has to be death, but think about it. There's some accidents that happen in parenting, right? Where the whipping and the whipping and the whipping sometimes has to turn into an apology and a brokenness because there's some stuff you're working on inside of here. And there's some catastrophes in families, and there's some arguments, and there's some choice words, and there's some blow-ups, and it's this type of scenario. And then what happens? Well, the highway department comes out, and they take this apart, and they put a new one in, and they repair it, and they restore it. And parenting is about a lot of restoration and repairing. It's not perfect. And you guys know this a lot better than, some of you guys, a lot better than I do. It's a process, and there sometimes is a redo, and there's sometimes an apology and a do-over, and a let's back up a second, and let's try to rebuild, and let's try to keep doing this the right way. Bottom line, let's still keep going in the direction that we know we're going in this journey. Next picture. Parenting is still about trying to get your kids going in the direction that you're setting them up for success. Because you want them to score, you want them to get the strike. In this picture, you want success for your kids. We all know that. But I started thinking about the bumpers that you can put on the side. Next picture. And I thought about the blow-up bumpers and how soft and cuddly they are. And they're not as hard as when they hit the outside bumpers that are, the frames. But I thought about this. As soft as those look right there, if the ball hits that, it's almost got the potential to kill the momentum. Can you see that? Where the wrinkle is, if a ball really did hit that on the way down, it could almost kill the momentum and turn it sideways or almost stop it, but really impede it from flowing and going. All this I'm thinking about, how do I parent and how do I try to set my kids up for success? How soft do I make it for them? How cuddly and cozy, or how brutal?
Well, the hard one is brutal. The hard one is brutal. That one's soft. We slow them down. Both of them keep them out of the gutter.
Next picture. I agree. The point of the prayer and the hope of parenting is you want to keep them out of the gutter, of course. And then there's this kind, the frame, that's strong, it's stable, it's mechanical, it's to support them, support the ball, but it's got the rubber bumps on the side, and it's going to be a little bit easier, a little bit gentler of a process. Maybe not as cuddly as the inflatable ones, but it's still there, and you're still trying to guide them in the right direction. None of it's perfect, though, because when the ball hits the bumper, it's still jarring, right? There's still an impact, and it still hurts. All right. One more picture, or was that it? I thought that was it. The first or second line, I can't remember, in this song that is going to be up. We can sing to it or whatever. Listen to it. I don't know. The first line or two is about the promises that God has made to us. I think it's appropriate that we take a deep breath and remember that that God, our Father, just like Abraham that we started with in the beginning of this, that's still the example we look to and the encouragement or the hope for how parenting should look. Because obviously all of us in here know that we don't have it all figured out. We've all got work to do. We've all got growing. And we've all got examples we got to look at, right? Abraham is one of those, but obviously God, our Father, is definitely the best example.